Awesome. Okay. Share. All right, hopefully this goes off without any hitches. Let's do this. Okay. Can everybody see this? Good. Okay, cool. All right, so thank you guys for having me. This is really awesome to be here. When I got the email about this opportunity like months and months ago, I was like, wow, I've never seen anything like this. So this is really cool. So yeah, the fabled about me slide. Actually, let me move you guys on my view a little bit over so I can see everything that I wrote. So yeah, I am a Philly, not native, but grew up about an hour west of here and have been living in Philly for I think almost 10 years now. In addition to being enrolled in library school at Drexel, I'm actually also working for their library full time. So I'm an assistant with the Client Access Experiences Department. I was hired, I think, in 2018. Yeah, it was the day after Philadelphia won the Super Bowl that I started there. So I will never forget that whole 24 hours. It was interesting. I've been in library school since 2019. My major within the College of Computing and Informatics is library science, because they sort of have this umbrella of a Master of Information Science now. They've changed the names a few times, but my minor is in user experience design and human computer interaction. In addition to that, I'm also the president of the Drexel University Library and Archives Student Association, which has been around for a little bit. And it's just kind of like the student branch of the ALA, the Pennsylvania Library Association. And then I'm also like an official student member of the ALA and affiliates, which I think includes ACRL, Pennsylvania, and then the Medical Library Association. So I don't sleep, not really, not anymore. And a fun fact about me, I also started taking an American Sign Language course a few weeks ago. It's run by the ALA. Highly recommend. It's been really, really good, and it's centered around learning words and phrases in American Sign Language that are specific to help library patrons. It's been a really cool experience. I even got some of my coworkers on board to do it. So we've been having a lot of fun and we've been able to practice together. So really quick, I'll try to make it really quick. So I got into libraries when I was in college. I actually started out at the University of Pittsburgh, and through a friend of a friend started working as a work study student in their special collections department, and it was really sick. I mean, all the cool historical stuff, really fun memories there. I actually then transferred to Temple University and became another work study student there. And that's kind of where I really, really got into libraries and was like, this is what I want to do after graduation. I graduated with a BA in English there. And about 6 months, I think, or so, right after I graduated, I worked for the Free Library of Philadelphia before getting a job at Drexel. So I've been back and forth to the public and the academic library settings, but academic's my favorite. I really enjoy working with students. So that's kind of how I got in here. So why UX? When I started grad school, I had never even heard of this before. I did not know that this was something you could study. I was like, user experience design, what is that? But the courses listed, whenever I would register for class, would always come up in the College of Computing and Informatics listing. And I was kind of like, well, a lot of these sound really interesting. So I asked around and somebody kind of said, oh, well, UX is about like making technology easier to use. And I thought, oh, that sounds really intimidating. I bet you have to know software development and be really advanced at coding and all of that stuff. And they were like, no, actually, it's more about, it even has some aspects of psychology, so to speak. It's about talking to people and really finding out how they use things, observing people in a natural environment and doing that kind of stuff. And I was like, oh, that would go hand in hand with library science. Like, that's really cool. And also, again, and I'll talk about this at length, it fascinates me still to this day that this is something you can even study. It's just, I find it to be really, really cool. So I started doing a little bit more research, and like, I couldn't really put this into words at the time, but I felt like learning about this and thinking about every experience and everything that I had done in libraries thus far kind of led to this moment of like, aha, the light bulb went off. This is what I want to do. I knew that, I was leaning in the direction of wanting to work continually in academic libraries after I finished library school. But I was like, user experience librarian, this is a thing. And so, oh yeah, okay. So yeah, I learned that it's not, you know, just about coding, although that is a part of it, and becoming better with technology and other kinds of softwares. But I was really relieved to know, like, no, this is just much more than that. So I thought, okay, I'm going to try this out and see what happens. So I took Drexel's introductory course on that, which is called Info 508, but it's also known as Information Innovation Through Design Thinking. I have Design Thinking here. This was an incredible introductory course. It was definitely very much, you know, I was relieved to know it was geared towards anybody who really didn't know what UX was or had zero experience. You know, you can go right into this really just thinking, I want to try this out and it'll be good. My professor was incredible. I've had him a couple of times. I'm actually really excited to say that because Drexel's on the quarter system, which is, you know, so our start and stop dates for each term is a little bit wonky, but I'm having a course with him that starts on the 28th. Really excited. In this course, and I'll kind of show you guys some of these in the next few slides, we did what I like to call baby's first prototypes, which is kind of learning about A, what prototyping is, and B, how it relates to the whole design thinking process, and just making both your technologies, but any kind of process that you have in a library specifically better. So I will say that, and I'll talk a little bit more about this in a bit, but through this class was the first and actually the only projects that I really got to do that was involving both UX and libraries. Yeah, I'll talk a little bit about that in a moment. So we went through all these steps. We learned about, you know, how do you conduct user testing? What are best practices? And what kinds of user testing can you conduct? What actually goes into a survey? Things like that. And so my two group mates and I that I had to really convince to do this for our final, we sort of ended up just doing a social media campaign for our final project. And I said, you know, if we go out there and we talk to people about libraries and what they like and what they don't like, this will get us so much information and it'll be really cool. And it'll be a springboard to do other projects like this. And so they were like, okay, cool, like we'll do it. So yeah, this was just one of the screenshots of something that we did on Twitter. And the social media campaign, we created this hashtag called @YourLibrary, and it was trying to get people in our specific targeted age group, which was like post-college people that weren't still in school, that were just out there working, trying to get them to realize like, hey, you know, this place that you studied at a lot in college, like it's still here for you. It's still here for you in a number of different settings. And there's actually a lot of cool things going on here that you guys just may not know about. So this was really focused on outreach. Yeah, we did a couple of things on Instagram too. And really what this helped me understand, the design process, you know, it starts as literally a doodle in a notebook. We were required to keep a notebook for this class. We were required to write down as many ideas as we came up with, even if they were absolutely insane. And, you know, you would need $1 million to come up with this, or to actually put out this idea. You know, you're encouraged to think outside the box, but, you know, to not like really doubt yourself about what might work. But then also to bring in the users, talk to them and say, okay, here's what they like, here's what they don't like. So this was a prototype of what we did on Instagram. So let's see. Put this here. So just sort of sum this part of it up. So these are just like really quick, the courses that I've taken thus far that I felt like have gone hand in hand the most with each other, and also have been just really pertinent in general. The UX research methods listed here on the left is the one that I just finished a few days ago. I'm glad class is over. This was a great term, but it was challenging in like really, really good ways. This involved so many different kinds of user testing and user research methods, things that I'd never heard of before, like card sorting, affinity diagramming. I mean, we went so in depth with what goes into a survey that, like I said, it's something that I never even considered before, that you have to think, you know, at this level of depth about it. But once we were able to sort of go through that and actually put it into a project and actually produce a survey that we had to think at that level about, I immediately began to see, okay, this is where you start to get real results. And this is where you draw people in and you get to see what they really think and what users really want out of either a website, just a general process that you use. So yeah, and intro web design, that was extremely intimidating for me, but that same professor that I had for information innovation through design thinking was actually the instructor of this course. It was incredibly not hard to learn about HTML and CSS. I was terrified of that because I've never really been like I love and appreciate STEM, but that hasn't always been like my thing. And I was really excited to learn like this actually isn't as bad as it seems. And it's an important part to understand. It's an important thing to understand when you do UX testing with a lot of people. So, so how do you define UX in libraries? So when I was kind of preparing to give this talk, I was like, I really want to talk to one of the supervisors here at Drexel, who actually does some of the UX testing within the library. And so I talked to her about all of this. I asked her a bunch of questions and she was like, obviously UX is not new by any means. And it's not necessarily new in libraries. The practice itself is not, but the name is new. Putting a name to what we actually do all the time to improve services and everything, that is new. And she explained that a lot of people can, at least at the current time, are either self-taught like she is. They just kind of take advantage of, like we have a couple of, what is the word I'm looking for? Professional development opportunities. And she was like, I kind of just learned that way. She herself also got her master's at Drexel, but she was like, this is something that I just did all by myself. And so she talked about how she personally would define UX in libraries, and it's a lot of stuff that rings close to home. Being able to provide being able to provide services that are helpful to students, finding out what they really need, wants versus needs, and showing users that we actually care enough to do testing to improve. This picture on the right here is something that I think she has done a couple of times, sort of behind the scenes. And this is what, if you're not familiar with Affinity Diagramming, this is what that looks like. Taking over an entire room or at least just a wall wherever you can, getting a group of people together to write down the things they like and dislike about something, separating it into categories, and then comparing everybody's answers. It's kind of a complicated process because you see how many people's answers differ all of the time, but this is one of the things that we also got to do in my class this past term. And again, like I said, fascinated. This is incredible. And there are actually a lot of really great online programs where you can just do this instead of having to physically take up a huge space about that. So, I wanted to mention, I'm really fortunate to have this position that I do with Drexel University Libraries. This allows me, of course, with a little bit more connections to talk to people about UX in libraries, and also to kind of, see firsthand what's going on, but also to provide like input on projects that we've done over the last few years and projects that I hope that we can end up doing in the future. The person that I had this conversation with is the head of access services. And she said, that's kind of our natural home for UX at Drexel. And she also elaborated on how the pandemic actually really allowed us to explore new projects and things that were worth fixing and sort of doing over because we had suddenly had all this time and couldn't provide any in-person services. And so we were able to completely reevaluate online services that were both ones that were working well and ones that were not working as well, and how we could improve upon them both. So some of the things that we ended up doing was, along with some co-op students that are also in an undergraduate program for UX, we changed our ILLiad interface, our areas course reserves interface. I created some documentation to go along with that. We switched over to Primo VE, I think, last summer. That's kind of when the process began. And so there was some preliminary testing done with that with students. seat reservation system that we had to develop during the pandemic when we first opened back up, and everybody was like really, and not everybody was vaccinated yet, and you really had to be on your A game about, okay, who's in here and at what time. And then also, as I mentioned before, the Library Juice Academy professional development courses, she got me onto that. And so I've started to look into that, and I'm looking to take a few more courses that are covered by professional development at work to sort of aid me in my studies. And so just as a real quick example, this is, I had to dig way back to find this, but this is like an example of what one of the interfaces used to look like. This is the one for areas course reserves. And I remember trying to explain this process to professors, some who had used it before and some who were not familiar with it at all. And it was such a pain every single time. And the interface was part of the reason for that. It's kind of confusing. It's not very attractive looking. But through lots of testing and feedback, we made it to look like this. And so this took a lot of time. But I think overall the general feedback was positive. You know, I find myself having to explain the process a little bit less, at least, to a lot of professors that are new to this or just haven't done it in a while, either because of the pandemic or something like that. But it was really cool to look back at this and see, oh my gosh, like, no, this was actually a really huge change, and I'm proud of the work that we were able to put out there. This is another quick thing that I created because some of you maybe went through the same issue, but when we finally opened back up during the pandemic, we had no student workers. All of them graduated. And so we were kind of stuck doing all of these different things, you know. Oh my God, this past first week of fall term was absolutely insane. And I was kind of bracing for that. And I thought, you know what, we're going to save ourselves a lot of time by not having to give people tours. And so the self-guided tour was created. And when I talked about this, I talked about this once at a networking event for students in the program. And I said, you know, this was a lifesaver because I took some feedback that I remember receiving in the past and saying, okay, here's a less confusing way to familiarize yourself with something in college that is going to be a really valuable resource to you as long as you allow it to be. So I was really, this was also one of my first attempts at using Canva. And so that was really exciting. So when I was reviewing, actually, no, let me back up. So when I was kind of preparing this whole presentation, I wanted to bring in a little bit of what DULASA is doing, which is the student organization that I help run, to try to bridge the gap. Because like I said, there's not a ton of meshing between HCI and UX and library science at Drexel, at least not yet. So me and the other officers were trying to sort of bridge that gap just a little bit, trying to bring some of these students together, trying to reach out to people who are current UX librarians to come and talk. So we're in talks with people at Temple and also at UPenn, and are trying to put events together where they can come and actually give professional advice, talk about their experiences. We've also started reaching out to other schools with similar programs as well. And I didn't have a ton of time to look this up, but there are a few. There's not a ton, but I think UNC Chapel Hill, I remember figuring out, also has sort of a similar program to what Drexel's got right now. And so we're trying to do like a sort of, we're working on reaching out to them and doing like a dual event and bringing people also to talk to our students and, you know, maybe some people from Drexel CCI to talk to their students and that kind of thing, and just get this going because, you know, like I said, this isn't, there are some people out there, there are some resources out there to look up to, but there's not like a ton yet. And so you call this like being the change you wish to see, because this makes me think of like, you know, representation matters. I don't know how high I can shoot and I don't know what I can go for unless I can find other people who have, or at least start to find other people who have kind of already begun to do this. So that's another thing that I'm working on right now. Another thing that I wanted to bring up that has been super, super helpful to me along this whole journey of learning UX and just learning how it's relation to libraries. There's an organization in Philly called Philly CHI, which is Philly Computer Human Interaction Organization. And they host events, and it's always free for us students. They always advertise it to us on our listserv, and they have all these incredible events to talk about information accessibility. They have mentorship programs. They offer a ton of professional advice, and they have design showcases and other things like that. This has been really, really integral to the whole learning process for me, and I really don't think that I would be in the place that I am now in the whole learning process without these guys. So I just wanted to give them a quick shout out. There's a lot of people that attend these events. Like, it's not just Philly specific. They invite people worldwide. For example, they had a guy at Google do the event on information accessibility recently. I mean, I'm sure has a lot of contacts that he invited, but there were people from all over the country from that event. And the whole thing was completely free, which as a broke grad student, I really appreciate. So that was really, really amazing. So sort of nearing the end here, I wanted to say that, talk about the Capstone Project. So the Capstone Project is required of all students in the College of Computing and Informatics, regardless of what your major is, what your minor is, all of that good stuff. And I remember having to do a sort of junior version of this when I finished college. And this one in grad school now seems way, way more daunting to me. But luckily, the head of the program is really, really nice and sends out information about this every term. And she kind of talks about it, I guess not in a philosophical way, but sort of in to hopefully like calm some of your nerves about this. And she says, think about the question you want to answer, instead of thinking about it like, oh, this is another annoying research project or thing that's going to take all this time. And, you know, I have to prove myself and all the things that I learned in grad school in doing this. Think about the question you want to answer. Think about what change you want to make. And also, but how that can relate to like a project that you envision yourself doing in your professional career. And so that kind of helps me started get the wheels turning in my head. I'm still trying to find the exact right direction on what I want to do. But I really would love to do a case study within Drexel's library about some sort of UX question that I want to answer. I was thinking of maybe working with some of our student workers, as they're a great user group, and as, you know, yes, they are convenient because they're there a lot, but they're not complete beginners, but they're also not complete experts when it comes to using library services and doing things online. And I would also love to take that and then maybe develop some sort of UX guidelines that are specifically for libraries in this whole process. This is, again, just me sort of churning out as many ideas as I possibly can and then figuring out what works, what's feasible, and then, you know, what doesn't, and then go from there. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Thank you guys for having me so much. If anybody wants to connect on LinkedIn, my LinkedIn is down there. And yeah, seriously, I can't thank you enough. This was a really cool opportunity and I really enjoyed it. I'm gonna stop the recording.
Yay. I think, gosh, I took so many notes. It was great for us, I think, to hear. I don't know. Let's see.